This is the tale of Squirrel Nutkin. The word tail has two meanings. Of course, it means the part of an animal's body. It also means a story. This is a tale about a tail. The tale of a little red squirrel named Nutkin. Now, Nutkin lived with his brother Twinkleberry and all their many cousins in a wood on the edge of a lake. In the middle of the lake was an island, and on that island grew a great oak tree. And that was the home of old Mr. Brown, a great horned owl. Every year in the autumn, the squirrels would come down to the lake. This autumn, Nutkin and Twinkleberry and all the other little squirrels came down to the edge of the lake. They made rafts out of little sticks, and then they climbed on the rafts with a little sack over one shoulder to hold their nuts, and another stick in their paws to paddle with. They climbed onto their rafts and they spread out their tails for sails. And they paddled, and the wind helped blow them to Owl Island. That first day, Twinkleberry and the other little squirrels brought old Mr. Brown a present of 3 fat mice. They laid them on his doorstep, and Twinkleberry bowed politely. "Please, old Mr. Brown, may we have permission to gather nuts on your island?" But Nutkin was so rude. He bobbed up and down on old Mr. Brown's doorstep like a little red cherry singing. Riddle me, rot-tot-tot, a little wee man in a little red coat, a staff in his hand and a stone in his throat. If you guess this riddle, I'll give you a groat. Now, a groat is a little coin. Nutkin didn't have a coin to give, and old Mr. Brown didn't care about riddles. But he ate up the mice. On the second day, the squirrels brought old Mr. Brown a present of a fine fat mole. Again, they laid it on the doorstep and asked politely, "Please, old Mr. Brown, may we gather more nuts on your island?" But Nutkin was so rude. He tickled old Mr. Brown under the chin with a prickly weed called a nettle and sang this riddle. "Oh, Mr. B, riddle me ree, hitty-pitty within the wall, hitty-pitty without the wall. If you touch hitty-pitty, hitty-pitty will bite you." Old Mr. Brown didn't care about riddles, but he ate the mole. He picked it up and went inside and slammed the door in Nutkin's face. Pretty soon, a little wisp of blue smoke came floating up from old Mr. Brown's chimney. Nutkin put his eye to the keyhole and sang, "A house full, a hole full, you can't gather a bowl full." The other little squirrels filled their sacks with nuts, but Nutkin was so rude. On the third day, the squirrels got up very early and went fishing. They caught 7 minnows, little fat silvery fish, and Twinkleberry and 6 other squirrels carried them and laid them on old Mr. Brown's doorstep. But Nutkin was so rude. He sang another riddle. The man in the wilderness said to me, "How many strawberries grow in the sea?" I answered him as I thought good, "As many red herrings as grow in the wood." On the 4th day, the squirrels brought old Mr. Brown 6 fat beetles, wrapped in dock leaves and pinned together with pine needle pins. They were as good as plums in plum pudding to old Mr. Brown. He was very interested in those beetles. But Nutkin was most rude. He sang, "Flower of England, fruit of Spain, met together in a shower of rain, put in a bag, tied round with a string. If you guess this riddle, I'll give you a ring." Now, old Mr. Brown didn't care about riddles. And it was just as well, because Nutkin didn't have a ring to give. The other little squirrels filled their sacks with nuts. But Nutkin gathered a robin's pincushion and poked it full of pine needle pins. On the 5th day, the squirrels brought a comb of sweet honey that they had taken from a wild bee's hive up on the hill. They set it down on old Mr. Brown's doorstep and licked their fingers. So sweet. Yum. But Nutkin sang another riddle. "Hum-a-bum buzz buzz, hum-a-bum buzz. As I went over Tippletine, I met a flock of bonny swine, some yellow-nacked, some yellow-backed. They were the bonniest swine that e'er went over Tippletine." Now, old Mr. Brown didn't care about Nutkin's riddle, but he ate up the honey. The other squirrels gathered nuts, but Nutkin played bowling on a flat rock with green pine cones and a crab apple. On the 6th day, the squirrels came again for the last time. They brought old Mr. Brown a new laid egg in a little rush basket. "Please, old Mr. Brown, may we gather nuts one last time?" But Nutkin sang, "Humpty Dumpty lies in the beck with a white counterpane round his neck. 40 doctors and 40 wrights can't put Humpty Dumpty to rights." Old Mr. Brown sat still on his doorstep, and Nutkin began again. "Old Mr. B, old Mr. B, hickamore, hackamore on the king's kitchen door. All the king's horses and all the king's men can't drive hickamore, hackamore off the king's kitchen door." Nutkin danced up and down on the owl's doorstep like a sunbeam, but still old Mr. Brown said not a word. Nutkin began again. "Arthur O'Bower has broken his band. He comes roaring up the land. The King of Scots, with all his power, can't turn Arthur up the bower." And then Nutkin made a whirring noise like the wind and took a flying leap and landed on old Mr. Brown's head. Well, there was a flutterment and a scufflement and a loud squeak, and all the other little squirrels ran away to hide. And when they came back, peeking around the edge of the bushes, there was old Mr. Brown still sitting very still on his doorstep. But now Nutkin was in his waistcoat pocket. Well, old Mr. Brown held Nutkin up by his tail. He was going to skin him and eat him. But Nutkin pulled so very hard that pop! His tail broke, and Nutkin was able to escape up old Mr. Brown's back staircase. But to this day, if you meet Nutkin and you look up at him as he stands on a branch above you, he will stamp his feet and he will scold you. Because he is still so mad about losing his tail. And that is the story of Squirrel Nutkin.